Welcome back to Make It Make Sense with Tomee Sojourner-Campbell. Today, our guest is Tyler Downey, president of SEIU Healthcare based in Canada, and also Tyler and members of SEIU Healthcare have done a lot of fantastic work over the last several years. But in particular, I'm going to be talking to Tyler today about the power of using documentary storytelling to tell the stories of union members. And one of the main reasons why is because SEIU Healthcare has put together a lovely documentary called Endless Shifts, Stories That Keep Care Alive. And it showcases the stories and the commitment of members to patient care and community care. And so from there, we're going to launch our conversation. So welcome, Tyler, to have this conversation with me today. I'm really happy that you're here. I wanted to start off by just giving an opportunity to just hear your thoughts around the power of storytelling and the power of documentary filmmaking as a way for union members and the labor movement in general to get the stories out of members to the general society.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me on to share some of my experiences. So, I guess I'll just start with why we've decided to, and we've always been a union that has used storytelling as a tool to advocate for members and our members and workers generally in the province of Ontario. There was a time I come from you know uh, low income. We lived in Toronto community housing, yeah, right into my 20s. So most of the Toronto community housing and around Jane Street, from Jane and Steeles all the way to Jane and Bloor, we've lived there at some point in my life. And part of what was the common denominator was the struggle. So everybody struggled the same. Um, but it was almost like, and I felt this when I was in my teenage years, it was almost like they didn't have a voice. Like we just didn't have a voice. We didn't really matter. The we were almost in a bubble, and the only way you got out of the bubble was if you moved or you got an opportunity to go somewhere because you had a friend or something. Like it was really like if you're on Jane Street, you're Jane Street. But one thing was clear is that um, I saw people who had like super strength. These were superhuman beings, people juggling two or three jobs. My mom juggling three jobs and four kids, and still making it, meals on the table and church on Sundays, and having the routine. And I always was wondering, like, okay, why does it feel like we have no say on what happens in our communities? And so, as I got older into my early 20s and started organizing and started working on like tenant issues, and realizing people were being silenced um, because of what they look like. That's really what it boils down to. And so here in the union, part of what's important for us is to always make sure that our members' stories are front and center of how we advocate. And I'll give you one clear example. There was a time when no one was talking about home care workers. No one. I mean, you had some small groups maybe doing some advocacy, and I'm probably going back, 14, 15 years ago. Um, you know, and we always knew that the future of care delivery in this province and this country, frankly, was going to be in the home setting. And
Yes.
so as, standards remain low, you can't attract people to low standards. I mean, you got to raise the standards so that people want to be attracted to working there. Um, and so what we did was we put a real concerted effort to get stories from, support workers to tell the truth about the work that they do. Because back then, people thought home care workers were just housekeepers. Like, it was just, people that clean houses and, provided meals for people. And they didn't realize they were actually delivering care. They were bathing. They were making sure they had a good set-in. They were making sure that wounds were taken care of. Like support workers were doing all of this work, but nobody knew about it. And so we went on, it was probably about a 3 or 4 year run where We met with community groups, we talked with politicians, we had our members go down to Queens Park, a lot of our home care members for the first time speak to politicians and talk about their struggles as home care workers. And what happened in 2014, it was around the election time. The provincial government at that time ended up moving the minimum wage, which was one of our asks or demands at the time, from $12.50 to $16.50. And now, I mean, if you're in home care, you're probably in around 19, $20 an hour. So it's not great, but it's not $12.50. But it
Yeah.
all happened because of the stories that were told. It would all happen because of the stories of the immigrants that worked in home care, the women that were single mothers that were working in home care, delivering care. And so the power of storytelling is not just about, how do we just tell a story so people can hear? And yes, you can get some knowledge and understand it, but it's also how do we use that as a tool to create meaningful change for folks? And that's what we did in that example.
No, and then I think that's an excellent example of how community voice is mobilized so that it's not only the single story, but it's the thread of where are people in their journey, the amount of work that gets done, quote unquote, behind the scenes in terms of personal support workers, as you're saying, and the fact that I think that the general public certainly needs to know more about that. And I do remember in 2014 hearing more about what was happening in healthcare outside of sort of doctors and nurses,
Yeah.
right? Because the fact that, as you're saying, the trajectory for home care even now is becoming the demand is going to increase, right? We're an
Yeah.
aging population, and those individuals who are doing that work um, should demand respect. They are getting more respect, and I think that part of that work that's happening that you're doing at SEIU Healthcare is really demonstrating that they're an essential service and they deserve and need to be compensated for their time, their efforts. And our communities, in terms of our healthcare, dependent care, would not be able to do what we do, and people would not be able to, quite frankly, go out to do the work that they're doing without that backbone.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I right and the support that's there. And so I think with the telling and sharing of stories, as I look down to from the end of 2025 and going into 2026 and beyond, do you feel from your own perspective that there are sort of themes that have emerged from the story from the recent documentary you did that could be used in a broader public education campaign as an example, so that people not only understand but support the members when they need to have additional community support when they're lobbying for changes in health and safety and compensation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the documentary that you're referencing, Endless Shifts, stemmed from a visit that I had at a nursing home. And one of the members there, Janice, who I met and had a conversation with at the nursing home, she said, I've been in this work for 48 years at the same location, same place. And it just struck me. I was like, well, wait a minute, hold on, 48 years. That's a long time, you know? So, okay, so tell me, what was it like? What did you do? How did you get through? And when I left there, I was like wondering, I was like, well, wait a minute. If she's been 48 years, I'm sure there's other workers out there, members of ours, that are just as long, and nobody knows anything about them. Nobody knows. There's no learnings. There's no pass down information to the next generation. And so I decided to bring my videographer Felipe together and say, okay, we got to do something to document these stories. And so what do we find? We found someone like Mina Harris she worked with my aunt for about 27 years in Jane and Finch at a nursing home there. She's still there, 51 years at that place, you know,
51. Wow.
51 years. And, for Mina, she got really emotional. I mean, they all got emotional during the docu-series and filming, because it was like we were interested in hearing their story. And
Yes.
here's the part of the story that we're gonna work on as the next iteration of Endless Shifts. And people will, you'll see it. So I'm just teasing it out here for you.
Okay.
Um, but why? Why did you have to work so long? in healthcare. And what we're finding and what we're hearing is because they weren't able to retire. They weren't able
Yeah.
to retire with a decent wage or a decent retirement plan. I mean, they might have, the nursing home pension plan or a hospital pension plan, which will give them some level of income, the CPP. But if you're a home care worker, forget about it. I mean, you almost have nothing going for you in home care. And so it's stories like that that we're going to highlight more of on the reasons why folks are not able to retire at that golden age of 60 or 65. We have a member, you know, she loves me, so I can say her name, Millie, um, 70, 78, 79, and still going. Still a
Wow.
healthcare worker, PSW, I mean, she loves what she does, obviously. But she just can't afford to go and not work. And that's what our society is seem to become in the healthcare space. And so it's things like that that we're going to try to lift up to the top and hear stories of workers and our members who just can't afford to leave work. They have to work into their later years, which you know, I'm not sure that's the type of society we want as Canadians. We shouldn't normalize, workers working into their 70s. Like that shouldn't be a normal thing. People should be able to work up until a certain point and retire and have a dignified retirement. Especially folks who have given 48, 51, 52 years to their profession.
I agree with you. And the fact that, I think in terms of the advocacy and the lobbying around people understanding what is involved in being a personal support worker, right? It's the toll it takes on one's body,
That's
on
right.
and the amount of work that gets done, and also the things that might be going around in terms of the interpersonal relationships and the way that people get treated and mistreated, and some of those more challenging, difficult conversations. And so I think that, to the point that you're talking about, as this docuseries progresses and more information is being shared, I totally agree. And I don't, and for me personally, I do not think anybody in Canada should have to be working into their 70s and 80s just to survive.
Yeah.
And, the cost of living is astronomical in many spaces. I live in Toronto. So, just being here and seeing how things are shifting, access to housing, safe housing, housing that you can transition to. So as you age, it's accessible. All of those things are a part of these journeys. And I think one of the things of many things that I appreciate about what you're doing with the docuseries is showing the fullness and the embodiment of these individuals, right? The emotional aspect of, the work that they're doing, the commitment to community development, the fact that with each story and vignette and narrative that you share is that these individuals are leaders. They're building relationships with individuals who may have nobody other than that person that they're interacting with, your members, right?
That's
Our
right.
members of our society. So
That's right.
for me, one of the pinnacle pieces is how, as the docuseries progresses and as the stories keep being told and shared and hopefully amplified in universities and and different courses in high school and even in primary school, so people learn about what does a PSW do, who are they, say they no longer in some people's minds become are faceless, nameless individuals, but are your auntie, your grandma, your mom, your uncle, the people who mean the most to you in this world, and to see that connection, your neighbor, right? And I think that's what I value and I see so much in a documentary storytelling is that it unveils a
Yeah.
reality that many of us don't even understand or may not even imagine in a way that might correct our negative stereotypes, as an example, right?
That's
So I
right.
think for me, my next question to you really is about where do you see, just in a sort of a broader sense, and I guess it's a broad question, the possibility for documentary storytelling for members that work in sort of under visual, I guess we don't, I'm trying to find a word, but taking their stories from the periphery into the center, where do you see documentary filmmaking or storytelling uh, having the power to do that?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. Let me just go back for a second before I answer that question. Um, what's super interesting about um, what is currently happening in our world, anyways, because I'm just going to talk about our world. I'm sure it's
Okay.
other unions and other organizations are experiencing the same. But we have a what's called a member service center. And it's a call center. And a program that, I helped create in our union, which was the member assistance program, to help deal with the gaps that exist for folks to get supports for various issues. Whether it's mental health, whether it's substance abuse treatment, facility placement, taxes, all that stuff. We created a program for the last 3 years. We've had it up and running. You want to know what the number one reason why our members call for that program specifically? If you were to take a guess, what do you think the number one issue folks call in to our member service center for help with?
I imagine it's probably with housing, day-to-day things that you and I and other folks would may perhaps, well, I'm not saying you would take it for granted, but I might take it for granted. Like the sort of some basic rights and basic care.
Okay. Yeah, you're close. Food insecurity.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have hundreds of our members call every month, and we have to direct them to the different food banks and different places that they can access food. Now, keep in mind, these are working healthcare workers. It's not like people are just at home hanging around. Like these are folks that get up in the morning to go
Yeah.
deliver care, to be that resident's only friend and only person that they're going to see for probably weeks on end. And they've got to go home to and access food banks. That's what we're seeing increase. So I wanted to just say that as part of like the story that needs to be told. And we're working on how we're gonna tell that story. But to your question of how documentaries and docuseries can help better inform and better improve the conditions, whether it's care, whether it's our society generally, um, we live in a what we I love Canada. We live in a democratic society that allows us to express ourselves. And what tends to happen too often is people get afraid to express themselves and
Yes.
tell their story and tell the truth. And so what that does is it doesn't show people what's really going on. And so I think through documentaries, through docuseries, it's been successful for us. But just generally, we need more. We need more of those happening across, this province and this country to tell the story of what's happening underneath the surface. Because most people, everybody's busy. So, you're going to see a clip on the news and you're going to make an assumption and you're going to make you're going to get your perspective from that if that's what you watch or if you read the newspaper or if you talk to friends, right? You're going to get influenced in different ways. But you're never going to go below that surface most of the time, right? To really
Hmm.
understand what is a healthcare worker going through on a daily basis. Like if I were to tell the average person that, we get hundreds of members calling, to access food banks in their neighborhoods, people wouldn't believe me. They're like, oh, that's whatever. They're. Probably making good money. Um, and what's interesting to me is why is that accepted? And so I
Yeah.
think the docu series and documentaries put people on the spot to say, well, hold on. Either we're going to improve because now it's come to light what's really happening, or we're going to figure out a way to brush it under the carpet and hopefully it goes away. And I think, for us, we're going to put our foot to the pedal and keep driving the need to have stories like members accessing food banks, stories like, um, you know, our members and workers generally not being able to retire at a decent age. Stories like home care workers whose standards still haven't been lifted, but the demand is increasing, and the attraction to the sector isn't there, and so we got to keep bringing those stories to light. But we need more people to do that. It can't just be one union. It's got to be multiple organizations,
I
multiple
agree.
people doing that type of work.
I agree. I agree with you. And I think that uh, I want to go back to something that you said about, when they're sharing the stories and going underneath the surface,
Yeah,
and to have a more fulsome, I think, pushback against some of the stereotypes that folks might have and the assumptions that if you're a personal support worker, you're making a certain amount of money, and then therefore nothing else is happening in terms of that troubling people's understanding around who's accessing food banks. Like it's almost like a mystery until there's an assumption being made of who it is, and
yes,
oftentimes that assumption is not working folks, working class folks who are working 2 or 3 jobs and
that's right.
still have to do what they need to do in order to pay their bills, access food security, and then the connection and the intersection between all of those different pieces, right? Food security, access to housing, access to well-paying jobs that are above minimum wage, that are above cost of living, that move with the times, so that folks can retire at a particular age in their life and stage in their life, particularly when you're doing jobs that are physically demanding, like a personal support worker and in healthcare, and make that connection and humanizing what's going on
Yeah,
within the healthcare sector. And I agree that other unions have to take part. I would love to see this as, in terms of the docuseries, but not only that, creating forums and stages. I think there's
yeah,
the labor movement in what I've observed, at least in Ontario and in Canada. There's a movement to increase more public awareness and public education.
yes,
But I know that takes dollars and resources and people in order to make that happen. I can, I would love to imagine or reimagine what if the city of Toronto took the docuseries Endless Shifts and said we're going to place it in every public library and do screenings across
right.
our city and our province, and then other provinces picked it up, and across the country, millions of Canadians would be deeply impacted,
Yes,
right? Because not everybody has access to the internet or TV or what have you. What happens if Cineplex decide, hey, we're going to screen Endless Shifts
yes,
right next to Wicked the For Good? You come in, you
yeah,
watch Wicked for Good, you watch
yeah,
Endless Shifts, right? Or
yeah,
or vice versa, and getting people to the space where they're able to sit back, digest the information, and then do some kind of critical analysis around what am I going to do to improve the lives of the people around me through advocacy, through lobbying and their spheres of influence, where they might have a particular opportunity to have a conversation with a politician or somebody who is works owns a healthcare facility, and make those shifts in a way that perhaps other folks don't have that power and access, and work
yeah,
collaboratively with SEIU Healthcare and other healthcare unions. And so for me, that's why I think it's so important to have this conversation with you today, because I am also thinking from my own location, what can I do and what am I able to do, and the kinds of conversations that I have with other unions in my various roles, and to encourage folks to keep thinking about where are we going as the conversations around we need more skilled labor, we need all of these things. I often go back to, well, what are we doing with the folks who are currently employed, and how are
yeah.
we supporting those individuals? And so I think that it is my hope in 2026. I know we're not out of 2025 yet, but we're almost there. That there will be more collaboration and other unions will take to co-lead with you, because I've seen the leadership that SEIU Healthcare is doing, and it's phenomenal. And then when I look at the
Yeah,
membership is incredibly ethnically, racially, linguistically diverse, intergenerational. That's powerful. And
that's
then
right.
when I look at some other spaces, I won't name them, that's not what I see.
Yeah,
That's not who I see leading these conversations from the podium. And so I am heartened by the fact that there's going to be more of this work, and there will be more of these conversations. I know you teased a little bit about what might be coming down the pipe in terms of the docuseries. I'm hoping that it will go into broader distribution if that's what your intention is.
Yeah.
Um, and so one last thing before we wrap up. Um, from you as a leader, can you share just one hope you have for leaders taking our sort of the labor movement to its next iteration of just highlighting uh, the work that's being done by members of all sort of backgrounds and how we, as leaders, can can continue to provide support? One thing that you would like to see in that.
Well, let me just say two things before we go.
Okay.
So the story that really needs to be told, especially in healthcare, is why is it the female-dominated workforce gets treated differently than the male-dominated ones like fire and police? Like, let's talk about that. Like, let's
Yes.
talk about why when you hit a nurse, it's like part of the job versus you hit a police officer, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
Like that's a
Yeah.
story we're gonna have to start talking about. So I just wanted to say that as part of the discussion today, and it's a story that we're gonna be bringing to the surface level um, in the near future. So I would say this: um, we can't wait. We can't wait for others to go and figure it out for us. We have to be proactive. We have to be the ones that strategize and put the plans together. We have to be the ones that resource that strategy. We have to be the ones that bring people together. We had a model for many years at our union, and it's not a knock on the leaders or whoever the people that were here, because that was their culture. It was we're gonna react. And what we've said now in this new era of our union is like, no, 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 we're going to be proactive and we're going to initiate things. So, i.e., our training center. We initiated a training center. Why? Because we saw that international nurses were being stuck here without any supports and anyone to help them become nurses in Canada. Nobody was helping them, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so you have all these immigrants come in here, want to become nurses, they can't become nurses, and now we have a pathway to do that for them. We just acquired a career college, so now we're going to be able to help dietary workers and cooks and housekeepers move from that classification to become support workers. Guess what that does? It moves them into a whole different income bracket and category. So
Yes.
now they can better provide for their families. Whereas before, who was going to help them? No one. And so those are just two examples of how we're leading as a union and how we're trying to set an example for everyone else to hopefully follow. We're super open to working with anyone who's interested in moving this way. We are moving fast and we're not waiting. So that's the message I want to just say to folks. We just care can't wait and people can't wait. We have too many people that are great people that are being exploited, that are being stuck, that are suffering from, occupational segregation, that we can help. We actually can help them. Unions can help them. We have the resources. We have the people. We have the expertise. And so, last thing I'll just say is, you know, underneath all of the things that you may see online that we're doing and creating, the number one thing that it's centered on is bringing those workers' voices to the table. Whereas those tables were never accessible for them, and now we're the ones leading the coalition building. We're the ones bringing government together. We're the ones bringing employers together, and that's where we should be, out in front and leading from the front. So we're going to continue to do that. Really excited about doing more work like that and yeah, getting the impact that we know we can have.
Well, you're having a tremendous impact, and the coalition building and the advocacy, it's being felt, it's being seen, and I'm excited to see what happens in the future. And I'm hoping that as you move forward as a union and as a labor movement, just bringing in more and more community members, and however we're able to provide supports on our end to continue with this work and getting the word out. I want to thank you for your time and for your words and for your wisdom and for your leadership. And I look forward to hopefully maybe in 2026 we do a follow up and launch some more of the powerful initiatives and continue to have these conversations. Thank you for uplifting the
Thank you.
voices and the reality of so many workers. Thank you for listening to Make It Make Sense with Tomee Sojourner-Campbell. Until next time, take care. Don't apologize. I am who I am, and you need to recognize.